Have you ever done something for years, quietly, privately, believing it was harmless, only to find out later it might have been slowly working against you? A 74-year-old man once sat across from me, eyes lowered, voice shaking, not from pain, but from regret. "I didn't know," he said. "I thought it was helping me." For decades, he'd followed a routine familiar to many men, never suspecting it could be affecting his body, his mood, even his sense of self. My name is Dr. Samuel Reed. I've spent over 30 years as a urologist helping older men protect their dignity, strength, and connection, not just to others, but to themselves. And what I've learned is this: after 60, some things change. And if you don't change with them, even something as natural as masturbation can quietly disrupt your health and your confidence. In this video, I'll share 5 important truths many men wish they'd learned sooner. Some may surprise you, some may challenge what you've always believed, but each one is here to support your well-being, not to take anything away from it. If this speaks to something you've felt but never said out loud, stay with me. What you hear next may open a door you didn't know was still waiting. Secret 1: 5 truths about masturbation older men were never told. I still remember Mr. Raymond, a 74-year-old widower who walked into my office with a quiet sadness in his eyes. After some hesitation, he looked at me and said, "Doctor, I don't function like I used to. Does that mean I'm no longer a man?" His words weren't loud, but the weight behind them was enormous. And sadly, they echo the unspoken fear of so many older men who've never been told what's normal, what's natural, and what's still possible. The truth is, this belief that masculinity lives and dies by the firmness of an erection is one of the most painful myths men carry into old age. We grow up in a world that links our worth to performance, timing, and physical dominance. No one ever tells us that intimacy can shift and deepen with age, that it doesn't vanish when your body slows down, that it actually grows richer when you stop measuring it by hardness alone. What changes in your 70s isn't your value, but the rhythm of your body. Blood flow becomes slower, hormones fluctuate, nerves may not fire with the same urgency, but none of this means you're broken. It simply means your body is inviting you into a new way of experiencing pleasure, one that isn't rushed, isn't pressured, and doesn't depend on what was true at 25. You don't lose intimacy. You learn to meet it differently. I've seen men hold on to shame for years, believing they've failed. They avoid affection, withdraw from partners, and even from themselves, all because no one told them the difference between orgasm and erection. But once they discover that the two aren't one and the same, a light turns on. They realize they can still feel deeply. They can still experience release, touch, connection, and joy. And more importantly, they can do so without judgment or comparison. One man I worked with, Harold, shared that for a long time. He felt like the lights in his life had dimmed, but after learning to approach his body with patience rather than frustration, he said something I'll never forget. "It's not that the light went out," he said. "It's just shining in a different direction now." That simple shift in perspective helped him reconnect with himself, with his partner, and with a kind of peace he hadn't felt in years. Here's what I want every older man to hear. Your sexuality didn't end. It transformed. And that transformation isn't something to fear. It's something to explore with fresh eyes and a kind heart. It asks for presence instead of performance, curiosity instead of control. It invites you to give yourself permission to enjoy what's real now, not mourn what's past. So many men were never taught that they could still matter in this part of their lives. That desire, touch, and closeness don't expire. You are still whole. You are still worthy. You are still capable of experiencing deep and honest pleasure. And this first secret is only the beginning. Because what if I told you that masturbation, the very word many men shrink from, isn't just about sex at all? It's about memory. It's about emotion. It's about quietly staying connected to yourself in a world that often forgets older men still need that connection. If this first truth is speaking to something inside you, if it reminds you that you're not alone in this, leave the number 1 in the comments. Let that be your way of saying, I'm still here, I'm still learning, and I'm ready to see myself in a new light. Now, let's move to the second secret, one that might completely change how you see an act so many men never talk about, yet quietly carry with them for a lifetime. Secret 2. Doctor reveals how masturbation changes after 60. A few months ago, I met a man named Arthur. He was 78, a retired postal worker with a quiet strength about him. He didn't come in because of pain or urgency. He came in and sat across from me and said, almost in a whisper, "Doctor, I don't feel anything anymore. Not just in the bedroom. In life." His words weren't dramatic. They were honest, heavy, and all too familiar. At first, Arthur thought his struggles were physical. Maybe his hormones had dropped. Maybe his nerves had dulled. But as we talked, a deeper picture began to form. Arthur had been masturbating almost every night for years, not out of desire or habit, but because it became the only time he felt some kind of release. He wasn't chasing excitement. He was searching for comfort, for stillness, for a moment of peace he couldn't find anywhere else. That conversation changed how I saw him, and more importantly, it changed how he saw himself. Because this is the part so many older men are never told. Masturbation isn't just a sexual act, especially as you age. It becomes emotional, it becomes neurological, it becomes something your body uses to regulate your mood, your sleep, your sense of connection with the world. You see, after orgasm, the body releases a cascade of chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. These aren't just pleasure signals. They help your brain unwind, they ease anxiety, they improve sleep quality. For many older men, especially those who live alone or feel disconnected, that release becomes a kind of quiet medicine, a way of saying to your nervous system, "You're safe now, you can rest." But here's where the shift happens. When it's done without awareness, when it becomes something automatic or numbing, it loses its meaning. That's what had happened to Arthur. His routine stayed the same, but the feeling disappeared. He didn't feel shame exactly, just emptiness. The act that once gave him comfort had turned into a ritual with no emotional return. That's when I shared something with him, and now I want to share it with you. We were raised in a world that told us to be strong, to hold it together, to keep our emotions locked away. We weren't taught to name our feelings, let alone explore them. So for many men, the only moment they truly let go, the only time they feel vulnerable, is during masturbation. And that moment becomes more than physical. It becomes a lifeline, a quiet, personal expression of emotion in a life that often demands silence. But here's the powerful truth. This act doesn't have to feel hollow. Not if you bring awareness into it. When approached with presence and intention, masturbation can become an act of emotional clarity, a reminder that your body is still alive, that you still deserve care. That touch, even your own, is a form of respect. You're not just keeping a habit from your youth. You're tending to the deeper parts of yourself that still long for warmth, comfort, and release. You're listening to the signals your body is sending and answering them with care instead of shame. It's not about lust. It's about connection with your breath, with your heartbeat, with the version of yourself that still exists underneath the noise of aging and responsibility. Now, here's something to consider. Many older men think that avoiding all sexual touch is the safer or more respectable route. They assume that letting that part of them go quiet is simply part of getting older. But what if ignoring it is actually doing more harm than good? What if not touching yourself at all is allowing important systems in your body to shut down quietly without you even noticing? In the next secret, we'll explore what happens when that part of your life goes completely silent and how it might be impacting your energy, your memory, and even your health in ways no one ever warned you about. If what you just read helped you feel seen, even a little, take a moment to comment with the number 2 Let it be a quiet reminder that you're not alone and that this conversation matters. Now, let's keep going. Secret 3. Why your private habit may be quietly hurting you after 60. I still remember Peter. He was 74, a soft-spoken man who had lost his wife many years earlier. When he finally found the courage to start dating again, it wasn't excitement that brought him into my office. It was fear. He sat across from me, eyes downcast, and said, "Doctor, I met someone wonderful, but when we got close, my body didn't respond. I think I'm broken." I hear versions of that sentence more often than you might imagine. Men who've carried quiet hope into a new chapter, only to be met by confusion and shame when their body doesn't follow. But what Peter, and so many others, didn't know is that this isn't about being broken, it's about being unused. And that's a very different story. Your body's alive, it's responsive, but it also adapts to what you give it. Just like muscles shrink when you stop using them, the tissues, blood vessels, and nerve endings in your sexual organs respond to activity or the absence of it. When there's no stimulation for a long time, things change. Nerve sensitivity fades. Elasticity in the tissue weakens. Blood flow slows down. This happens quietly, without pain, without warning. And by the time most men realize it, they assume it's just aging. But the truth is, much of it is disuse. Peter hadn't touched himself in years, not because he didn't care, but because life had become quiet. Desire had softened. Grief had taken up space. He thought intimacy belonged to the past, so he let that part of himself go. What he didn't realize is that his body was slowly adapting to that silence. But here's the good news, it wasn't too late. With patience, gentleness, and consistent attention, not pressure, not performance, just presence, Peter began to reconnect with himself. At first, it was subtle, a faint spark, a slight stir, but gradually, his body started to remember. And more than that, he remembered what it felt like to feel again. That quiet flicker of aliveness that so many older men assume is gone for good. You see, masturbation at this stage of life is not just about pleasure. It's about keeping systems active. It's about giving your body the signal that it still matters, that you still want to feel, that your sexuality is not something that disappeared with age, but something that evolves with care. Too many men think that without a partner, there's no point in maintaining their sexual health. That mindset is not only wrong, it's damaging, because your body doesn't just respond to partnership. It responds to attention, to engagement, to intention. And when you stop giving it that, it doesn't break, it quietly slows down. But with the right kind of care, it can come back to life in ways you might not expect. And that's why this third secret matters. The use it or lose it rule isn't about fear. It's not a warning. It's an invitation to stay connected, to stay aware, to let your body know that even in your 70s, even in your 80s, there's still reason to feel, to move, to respond. You haven't missed your window. It's still open, waiting for you to look through it again. But if not using this part of yourself leads to quiet atrophy, what happens when you are using it, but in a way that creates the wrong kind of pattern? What if the way you're staying sexually active is actually rewiring your brain to respond less to connection and more to artificial stimulation? In the next secret, I'll share something many older men don't see coming, a hidden habit that might be quietly reshaping your desire without you even realizing it. If this secret resonated with you and reminded you that it's not too late to care for your body, take a moment to leave a comment with the number 3. Let it be your way of saying, I'm still here and I still want to feel alive. Now let's move forward. What comes next may surprise you. Secret 4, masturbation over 60. What no one tells you, but should. One quiet evening, I had a conversation with Leonard, a thoughtful 68-year-old man who had been widowed for several years. He came into my office not because of pain, but because something inside him felt off. "I still touch myself," he said, "but I feel numb, not just in my body, but emotionally. It's like nothing really reaches me anymore." At first, he assumed it was just age catching up. But the longer we talked, the more we uncovered something deeper, something far more common than most men realize. Leonard had been watching porn almost every night. It started as a way to cope with loneliness, to feel some sort of spark in the quiet moments of life. But over time, that habit, which felt so harmless, had quietly reshaped his body's ability to respond. He didn't know it, but his brain had begun to rewire itself. What once felt vivid and personal had grown distant and dull. This is a truth many older men never hear, and often wish they had known earlier. As the brain ages, it becomes less flexible, less able to reset and adapt. When porn becomes the primary source of sexual stimulation, it floods the brain with high-intensity dopamine, the brain's reward chemical, and the more it happens, the more your brain gets trained to expect those fast, extreme visuals. Real life, with all its texture and subtlety, starts to feel flat by comparison. This kind of change doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in. What once felt like comfort begins to numb your senses. One day, you realize the images on a screen excite you more than the real thing. You notice your imagination has quieted. Touch, even from yourself, feels like it's missing something. But because it's such a gradual shift, most men don't notice what's being lost until they already feel disconnected. Leonard described the experience in a way I'll never forget. "It's like being in a bright room with no window," he said. "I can see everything, but I can't feel any of it." That kind of quiet isolation is more common than you might think, especially among older men who've carried years of habits into their later life without ever questioning them. But here's the part that gives me hope, and gave Leonard hope too. We didn't approach it with guilt or judgment. We took small steps. He began by cutting back, turning off the screen earlier each night, and replacing the routine with something more mindful. He started spending more time just breathing, placing his hand on his chest, noticing what he was feeling without rushing. Over time, something shifted. He began to notice sensation again. His body responded differently. His imagination, once dulled by repetition, slowly came alive. Within a few weeks, Leonard found himself reconnecting, not just physically, but emotionally. His sense of touch became meaningful again. His breath deepened. He felt less like he was escaping, and more like he was arriving, back into his own skin. The truth is, you don't need to quit everything or make drastic changes overnight. But if you've noticed that you feel more excitement in fantasy than in real connection, or if your body isn't responding the way it used to, it might be time to gently reflect on your habits. Your brain is still capable of change. Your body is still capable of feeling, but you have to give it the space to remember how. And now we come to the final secret, the one that brings everything together. Because beneath all the confusion, silence, and shame that surrounds this part of life, there's something older men deserve to hear, something that may completely transform how you see yourself, your body, and your future. If you've made it this far, stay with me. You won't want to miss what comes next. Secret 5: 5 habits that quietly shape older men's sexual health. One morning during a routine checkup, a man named Gerald, 75 years old, sat across from me with a calm presence and gentle voice. As the appointment was wrapping up, he paused. Then, almost apologetically, he asked, "Doctor, is it still okay to touch myself at this age?" It wasn't the question itself that caught me off guard. It was the way he asked it, as if he were revealing something shameful, something forbidden. What Gerald didn't know, and what I deeply wish more men his age understood, is this simple truth. Masturbation at this stage in life is not something to be embarrassed about. In fact, it may be one of the most meaningful and necessary acts of care you can offer yourself. When done with presence and intention, it's more than physical release. It becomes a practice of maintenance, of connection, and of quiet strength. Biologically, the benefits are clear. Regular stimulation keeps the pelvic floor muscles engaged and promotes healthy blood flow to the region. This helps maintain tissue flexibility and supports prostate health by moving fluids that otherwise might build up. But beyond that, it has powerful effects on mood and well-being. The body responds to orgasm with a release of chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine, which calm the nervous system, ease anxiety, and promote better sleep. For many older men who live alone or feel emotionally distant, these quiet moments can bring back a sense of peace. But perhaps even more important than the biology is what this act symbolizes. For Gerald, and for so many like him, desire had been tucked away in the corner, left untouched after years of loss and change. When his wife passed, he closed the door. For nearly 6 years, he hadn't allowed himself a moment of pleasure. "I thought it wasn't appropriate," he said softly. "I didn't think I was allowed to be that kind of man anymore." That sentence stayed with me, because I've heard it in different words from countless other men. We live in a culture that often teaches older men to shrink, to fall silent, to fade quietly into the background, as if feeling pleasure, or even seeking it, somehow no longer belongs to you. But the truth is, desire doesn't vanish. It changes volume. It becomes quieter. And if you don't listen to it, it doesn't go away. It turns into loneliness. When Gerald began to reconnect with himself, gently and without shame, something shifted. He didn't try to relive youth. He didn't chase what was. He simply gave himself permission to feel again. And over time, he noticed that he was sleeping better, laughing more, feeling lighter. The smile that had long disappeared from his face slowly returned. He told me one day, "I didn't feel younger. I just felt like myself again." That's what this fifth secret is truly about. Masturbation isn't a guilty leftover from a younger life. It's a bridge back to yourself. It can be a moment of healing, a reminder that your body still matters and still responds when treated with care. It's not about fantasy. It's not about escape. It's about choosing to stay present in your own skin. You are not too old to feel. You are not too old to want. And you are certainly not too old to deserve touch, connection, or release. Now that you've heard all 5 secrets, there's one final truth that brings them all together. Something that lives beyond biology, beyond routines or rituals. It's the deeper message that many men have gone a lifetime without hearing. And in just a moment, I'll share it with you. Because understanding it may not only change how you see your body, it may just change how you see yourself. Conclusion: 5 masturbation secrets older men wish they'd known sooner. If you've stayed with me until now, I want to honor that, not just for your time, but for your quiet courage. Because facing a topic like this takes more strength than most realize. These 5 truths weren't just facts. They were windows into real lives, real questions, and the deep, often unspoken hopes of men who thought this part of themselves had faded away. You've seen that your pleasure and connection are not defined by performance, that self-touch can be emotional, even healing, that neglect has a cost, but reconnection is always possible, that screen-driven habits may steal more than they give, and most of all, that this act, done with care, can be a return to yourself. So whether you're just beginning again or rediscovering a part of yourself long tucked away, know this: you are not too old to feel, not too late to heal, and never beyond the reach of desire. Comment still here below if this message resonated with you, and if you'd like more honest, age-specific insights like this. Feel free to subscribe. I'll be here, continuing the conversations no one else is having. Your next chapter is waiting, and I promise, it's still full of life.